Hey everyone, welcome to 2 Minutes to Review. I'm Matt.
And I'm Zach.
Longest album review in under 2 minutes wins. This time around, I hate to say this, but this is a classic album review at this point, and I'm doing it to myself. You're not even the one saying it.
Yeah.
Are you ready to feel old? Yes,
Yeah,
self,
that's
I'm
my
ready
line.
to feel old.
That's my line. Why are you taking my line?
This time, 20 years ago, Daft Punk released the Discovery album, their sophomore record. And it's kind of hard to believe at this point.
It's hard to believe that there was a time that Daft Punk was also just like a house dance group favorite, because this album really just skyrocketed them into the icons of dance music that they are known as today. I mean, all you have to say is Daft Punk and you immediately like envision the robots, the music, and they're such an iconic looking group now. And it really all started with this record. This was actually the first record that they adopted the robot personas, if I'm correct. So, and it's considered by many to be a very revolutionary album in electronic and dance music. So yeah, it's kind of sad to think that the album that sounded futuristic in 2001 is officially classic and old. Are you as depressed as I am by that statement?
Yes, I started off this episode with that. I still can't believe it. I very vividly remember listening to this when this came out, and it was actually probably because I wasn't really that big into electronic and dance at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was very hooked on One More Time, and it just kind of lit up a whole new genre of music for me, because I went like crazy deep into some electronic albums after this. And this I'm gonna start saying things in my review, so I'm gonna stop right now.
I'll also add to that is that you mentioned One More Time, and to me, all I keep thinking about is the hundreds of bar mitzvah, birthday parties, and sorry to make you feel old, but even middle school dance parties that would just blast this song. It's kind of weird to think that, oh man, this was the hot new dance song that was playing to get everyone pumped up at these school functions. And Here we are in our 30s acting like old men. Before we get ourselves even more depressed, Matt, I'm going to let you go first. So I will count you down.
All right, let's do it.
3, 2, 1 more time.
So this album for Daft Punk really, for me, is one of their strongest efforts that they've ever put out. It really brings together for me a couple of things that a lot of dance albums don't do. It does bring together that dance, the hard beats, the lack of lyrics in some tracks, just straight instrumentals. But then when they turn it up and they do start to get creative, and they do get creative a lot on the album, there is a lot of human-like soul in this, considering it's coming from two robots, or so they would have us believe. But yeah, like I started to mention earlier, One More Time, easily the danciest, the most catchy, lighthearted song on this album, and it really is a great lead track for the album. And then when I started to talk about like the human side of it, the way that it feels good is when you start getting into tracks like Aerodynamic and Digital Love, when they start bringing in those very heavily processed guitar solos where they almost try to make it sound robotic, but you can tell that it's actually either very well programmed or it's a human playing the guitar, and it just feels like this big ball of energy. And it's a lot of actually what feels like an Eddie Van Halen inspired type of tapping solo. So it's really awesome to see them bring that in there. Then they kind of tone it down a little bit with a couple of tracks that are like interludes, like Night Vision and, I know I'm going to say this wrong, Veritas Quo, whatever it is, track number 11 on the album. They do have like a pseudo-esque love song on here with Something About Us. And then really the only part of this album that falls flat for me is the last track on the album, which they actually, I think, did before they decided to put One More Time on the album. It's called Too Long. It's about 10 minutes. Yes, it really is too long. It's one of the only tracks that I don't enjoy on this. But if you're looking for a classic, quote unquote, house dance album with a lot of real just feel good tracks on it, including one of the biggest songs on here, which was actually sampled by Kanye West, Stronger. It is Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, which is kind of like the work person's anthem, if you will. But if you're looking for just a great album in general with all of this feel to it, go back and listen to Daft Punk's Discovery.
All right, the time has been locked in. Before we proceed with my award-winning review, that's going to be praised by millions and millions of listeners, what's your star ranking 20 years later?
Considering how well it holds up, I would say 4.5.
4.5. That's pretty damn high.
I can't give it 5 stars.
Okay. What's holding you back from 5?
A little album called Random Access Memories from them.
So it's so fascinating to hear you say that, because I feel like so many people, when Random Access Memories came out, thought it was okay, but it underdelivered compared to Discovery.
I say bullshit to them. Random Access Memories is incredible. I love that. It is. I'm going to say this: the production value might be another little misstep. It feels underproduced on Discovery. Random Access Memories, because it's so many years later and they're, just such a bigger group at that point, that album has some of the most crisp production, especially when you listen to it on vinyl. Digital on analog, it's kind of weird, but it works so well. And it has some really great songs, some catchy songs too. It's got a lot more of that soul and feel to it that I love from Daft Punk.
It was also your favorite album of the 2010s, which
yes.
when we discussed if you have to pick 3 episode of the best albums in 2010s, you proudly declared that as one of the best albums of that decade.
I can't even pretend to hide it. I love that album. So that's 5 stars. That's very close, but I'm saying 4.5.
Fair enough. All right, then. My turn.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, do it.
So it wasn't until I actually revisited this album that I remembered how many songs I not only knew just from hearing it for the first time, but also how much of the album itself, especially like Aerodynamic, actually served as the background soundtrack to so many TV shows, movies. It's the songs that you kind of forgot, like, oh yeah, this was a Daft Punk song. It just was instilled in my brain. And furthermore, songs like Digital Love and Voyager are really proof that Daft Punk is still an enormous major influence on almost all of the past decade's alternative indie and rock scene. You hear a lot of these bands incorporate that post-disco dance kind of style into their music with the instruments. I think this album is proof that this provided a blueprint for many bands. I'm thinking Tame Impala immediately. Now, that sounds like a compliment, but the more I actually was thinking about that, the more I kind of remember that I'm not exactly kind of fond of a lot of these groups that are more synth-heavy than they are rock-heavy. I mean, I love dance music, but a lot of this post-disco rock music that seems to be everywhere nowadays, I kind of have to blame Daft Punk for. And on top of that, well, the first 4 songs, I mean, they deliver such an incredible 1-2 punch of futuristic upbeat dance music. It's just in your face. But then I kind of found myself losing interest as the album progressed, and more so than I initially thought too. And as fascinating as it was to revisit this album, just to hear how influential this album has been on every band that's essentially considered hip rock now, on the other hand, I kind of feel like it lost its uniqueness over time, because if this album came out today, I'd be like, oh, well, 2001, this sounded futuristic. Now it just sounds like every other album, and it's kind of hard to enjoy it. I don't enjoy it as much as I thought I would after all this time.
Those are some pretty weighty words there, sir.
Yes. I use big boy words.
What's your star ranking?
You're going to hate me for this. 2.5.
Okay.
I appreciate how much you can hear its influence. By no means am I a rock purist, because you constantly hear people complaining whenever an award show announces nominations for Best Rock Album, and most of the acts are not really rock, or they're more dance oriented than they are actually rock. I'm not a purist who gets up in arms about it, but some of these bands sound a lot similar. And I get why, they rub people the wrong way. And as I was listening to this album, I'm like, man, I wasn't expecting to hear so much of this influence on them. It's a dance record for sure, but you can definitely hear the post-disco influence that ended up influencing a lot of the hip bands that Pitchfork seems to rave and call innovative, when really it's like, it just kind of all sounds the same.
See,
I was really taken aback at how I was expecting crisp production, futuristic sounding, and instead I was like, I can see how in 2001 this is the first time someone heard this, but there's definitely more human elements to it, which, to your point when you mentioned before, which is pretty interesting considering they want to be robots. Maybe that's it. I forgot how human it did sound for a band that's so larger than life. I was disappointed revisiting it.
I think one of the things that, especially if you don't listen to it a lot, I can understand how a lot of people kind of get fatigued when they listen to this type of music, because you get to the single and it's like, okay, yeah, I feel good. It's a great song. You feel upbeat. And then all of a sudden, everything else that might require a little bit, I want to say, more listening, it maybe doesn't pay off in the same way as that really ultra catchy single. And then especially with this album being as long as it was how many tracks long? 14 tracks long?
It's a long, granted, there's one or two that are more interludes than anything, but it's a long album. Maybe that's the other thing too, is that it started off so strong. As I mentioned, the first 4 songs, really strong. I just felt like it fell flat really fast, but that's just me. And you know what? It really doesn't matter what we think. Right, Matt?
Indeed.
I know it's a review show, but really, it's who had the longest review in under 2 minutes. So then, Matt, with that in mind, do you think your 4.5-star review beat my 2.5 star?
Yes, because I'm better at this game.
Would you like to know your score? Your timing, I should say.
Yes, what's my time?
You clocked in at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I know I went over. The longest review I think you've given in a long time.
Yeah.
I know there's been some reviews where you're like, you know what, screw it. I don't care about the time anymore. I have opinions. And we just said it. But this was long. Just like the album. Boom.
I just worked harder, better, faster, and stronger than you did. Boom.
You got me again. You got me one more time with that one.
Try not to short circuit yourself, because for you, my friend,
what did I get? What was my time?
2 minutes and 11 seconds.
Oh, I want an asterisk on this one, in that I still did technically go shorter, but
for the first time in a long time.
In a long time, I will admit that. But that's not how the game is played. We are both disqualified. Oh well. I think it is interesting, though, that we had such, not conflicting, but contrasting reviews of this album. With that in mind, what did you, the listener, think? Did you agree with Matt? Did you agree with me? Let us know on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Epic Footnote. And remember, you can stream us on any platform you can imagine. YouTube, Libsyn, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. There's probably something I don't even realize that we're on. That's where you can find us. Let us know what you think, and thank you so much for listening. And we hope you join us for another episode real soon.
See ya.